Welcome to Nerdy Psychology, where your mind's not as messy as it seems. We break it down with a little curiosity and make sense of your thoughts and your themes. So be curious, stay kind, keep your mind nerdy.
Let me describe someone to you. He's not sleeping well. He's snapping at his partner over things that really don't matter. He's drinking more than usual on the weekends. He gets headaches that he just chalks up to work stress. He's restless and irritable, a little reckless, and when anyone suggests that he might want to talk to someone, he laughs it off. Now, does that sound like anxiety to you? Most people would say no. Most screening tools would say no, and that's exactly the problem. Because according to mental health researchers who study men specifically, that man I just described might be textbook anxious. He doesn't just look the way we've been taught to expect anxiety to look. And today, we're going deep on what the researchers are calling, and I'm not making this up, Manxiety. Stay with me. This one matters. Okay, so what is anxiety actually? Before we get into what anxiety looks like in men, let's make sure we're on the same page about what anxiety actually is, because I think most people have this narrower definition than the science supports. The National Institute of Mental Health describes anxiety as part of normal human stress. It's a biological level. It's your fight or flight system doing exactly what it was evolved to do, reading a threat and mobilizing your body to respond. The problem is when that alarm system never shuts off, when there's no lion, no deadline, no actual emergency, and your nervous system is still firing like there is. That's what clinicians call generalized anxiety disorder. And it affects roughly 1 in 3 Americans at some point in their lives. And here's the framing I love from Dr. Ryan McDermott, a professor of clinical and counseling psychology at the University of Alabama. Anxiety is essentially living too much in the future, and depression is living too much in the past. Think about that for a second. Anxiety isn't just worrying. It's your psychological center of gravity being pulled towards things, well, that haven't happened yet. What could go wrong? What might you lose? What's not under your control? And your body responds accordingly. Now, here's the piece that the American Heart Association just highlighted that adds a layer most people don't know. Anxiety is not just a mental health issue. Research published in the Journal of American Heart Association has linked anxiety to cardiovascular problems in young adults and increased risk of death in people with existing heart disease. Your anxiety is not just in your head, it's in your chest, literally. Why anxiety looks different in men. Here's where the research gets genuinely interesting and a little uncomfortable in the best way. Psychologists distinguish between 2 broad categories of how people respond to internal distress: internalizing and externalizing. Internalizing looks like what we stereotypically think of anxiety, things like withdrawing and ruminating and worrying and avoiding. And this pattern shows up more commonly in women and girls, which is why part of our cultural image of an anxious person often skews the feminine. Externalizing looks completely different. It shows up as irritability, as anger, as risk-taking, as aggression, as substance use. These are the behaviors we tend to attribute to other causes, to personality, to stress, that's just how they are. But Dr. Joel Wong, a provost professor of counseling psychology at Indiana University, Bloomington, puts it plainly: men tend to become angry and irritable under anxiety. They might abuse alcohol. They might become physically aggressive. And because none of these behaviors look like worry or fear, we don't name them as anxiety, and neither do the standard clinical screening tools. And this is a real measurement problem in our field. Men don't describe their experience the way anxiety questionnaires are designed to detect. They don't walk into a clinical interview and say, I've been having a lot of anxious thoughts. They say things like, I just haven't been myself lately. I've been worried about work. My wife says I just snap at her all the time. That's anxiety. Clinicians trained to look for it, well, they'll find it. But if we're relying on self-report and standard screening tools, we're missing a significant portion of men who are suffering. And here's a part I want you to hold on to. The research consistently shows anxiety is measured more commonly in women, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's experienced more commonly in women. It may mean we built our measuring tools around one set of symptoms and left the other set completely invisible. Now we get to the part of the conversation that sometimes makes people a little nervous, and I want to just address it head on. Talking about masculinity norms and affecting mental health is not an attack on men or masculinity itself. The researchers who study this are not arguing that. In fact, Dr. Wong and Dr. McDermott, who are literally leading the committee updating the APA's guidelines for psychological practice with boys and men, are explicit about this. But here's what the research actually shows. Men who rigidly internalize narrow ideas of what masculinity mean, things like men don't cry, men have to be dominant, men have to be stoic, or asking for help is weakness, those men consistently show worse psychological outcomes over time. And not because something is wrong with being strong or disciplined or self-reliant, but because they've cut off a whole range of coping behaviors that could actually help them. Dr. McDermott says it this way: rigid masculine norms mean men eliminate options, and fewer coping options mean more accumulated stress with fewer outlets. Dr. Wong adds another layer. He describes anxiety that many men feel as stemming from a gap, the distance between the man they believe they're supposed to be and the man they actually feel like they are. And that gap is fertile ground for anxiety. And the more rigidly a man defines what it's supposed to be means, the wider that gap gets and the more anxious he becomes. There's also a self-perpetuating loop here. Men who conform to restrictive notions of masculinity are, well, less likely to seek mental health treatment because, well, seeking help itself can feel like a violation of those norms. So the very thing that's generating the anxiety also blocks the path to addressing it. Dr. Wong calls this an emotional prison, and I think that's exactly the right metaphor. It's not a character flaw. It's a system that's constraining men and quietly killing them. So what do we do with all this? Because information without application is just a very sophisticated way to feel bad. So here are some evidence-based approaches drawn directly from what the researchers recommend. Tool 1, reframe what getting help means. One of the most effective strategies researchers have found is reframing the meaning of seeking support, not eliminating the masculine framework, but working within it. Dr. Wong makes a point I love. And if you want to improve your game in sports, you hire a coach. You get feedback. You develop skills. You become a better athlete. Nobody calls that weakness. Why would improving your emotional game be any different? Therapy as coaching is a legitimate reframe, not a gimmick. It repositions the experience as skill building and performance optimization, something many men are deeply motivated by, and the research supports it as an entry point. Try this. If therapy feels like too much of a stretch, start with a workshop format: anger management, stress management, resiliency training. Many are available online. The content overlaps significantly. The framing is just different. And for many men, that difference in framing is what can open the door. Tool 2, learn to use breath as biological override. Dr. McDermott specifically highlights deep breathing exercises as a way to instantly activate the opposite of fight, flight response. And here's the nerdy part that makes this feel a little less wellness cliche and more like a tool. Your automatic nervous system has two branches: sympathetic, fight or flight, and parasympathetic, rest and digest. They can't be maximally active at the same time. Slow, controlled breathing, specifically extending the exhale longer than the inhale, directly activates your parasympathetic branch. You're not just breathing, you're pharmacologically interrupting an anxiety response using your own physiology. Try this: a 4-7-8 breathing. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 7, exhale for 8. Do it 2 or 3 times. Your heart rate will slow, your nervous system will respond. The irritability you feel building, that's fight or flight activation, it will override it. And tool 3, talk to someone even if it's not a therapist. Dr. Wong is a big advocate for therapy, but he's also honest. Therapy isn't for everyone, and insisting it is shuts men out before they get to start. Research on social support consistently shows that verbal processing of distress, even in an informal context, reduces the physiological stress markers. Talking to a trusted friend or a mentor or a pastor or a peer who's been through something similar has measurable impact. It's not the same as clinical intervention, but it's something, and something beats nothing every time. The key word in this sentence is trusted, not just available, trusted. Try this. Identify one person in your life you could talk to with the filter mostly down. Not to get advice, not to be fixed, just to say something out loud. Because here's what the research shows. Naming an emotion reduces its neurological intensity. The act of articulating what you're carrying actually changes how your brain processes it. 1 in 3 Americans will experience anxiety at some point, and a significant number of them, particularly men, will experience it in ways that nobody, including themselves, recognizes as anxiety. Irritability is not a character flaw, and restlessness is not weakness. Snapping at the people you love is not who you are. It might be what anxiety looks like wearing a mask. If this episode resonated with you, I invite you to like and subscribe so you can be a part of our nerdy community, and share this episode with a man in your life that may need to hear this. The research is clear. Knowing what you're actually dealing with puts you in the driver's seat, and being in the driver's seat is something most men can get behind. If you're interested in reading this entire article, I've linked it in the description below. Till next time, be curious, stay kind, and keep your mind nerdy. That's a wrap.